Good morning, FTMs and MTFs, and welcome back to another episode of Penny Yapping. I've just got back from the gym, and your girl has been hammering the Stairmaster, let me tell you. I'm a little bit tired from that, but the show goes on. Things got a little rough last year, I'll be honest, and I stopped going to the gym. The motivation to start back up again was fleeting for the most part, but it's really nice to be back into the routine of it all. Routine and discipline can be the groundwork for pretty much anything, but motivation is something that's super important that I don't think is spoken about enough. While discipline will keep you going, it's hard to trudge on when you constantly aren't feeling the best. Speaking of not feeling the best, while I was in this rough patch, I finally picked up a book that I had heard about a million times but never really looked into. It's 12 Rules for... I'm joking, it's not 12 Rules for Life. It's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, that's what I'm referring to. I personally wasn't familiar with Sylvia's work before this. I only knew she was a famous and respected poet who took her own life at a very young age. And I kind of want to dive into that a little bit today. I'm not going to review the book or anything like that. I don't think I have any insight that is particularly valuable in terms of literary analysis, but the book got me thinking a lot about being in a depressive state, and specifically the analogy of the bell jar. If you haven't read the book before, I will give a quick summary now. What I will say is a sort of trigger warning because there's some very bad stuff that happens in this book, specifically like essay. The Bell Jar follows a young girl, Esther, in the ritzy socialite environment of upper universities in the northeast of America. I can't fully remember where it takes place. I believe it's New York, but I can't remember what university it is. But Esther is a personage of Sylvia herself. We sort of follow Esther as she goes from top of the class to institutionalized after numerous attempts at her own life. Disillusioned with her friends and the life that she is prescribed to her as a woman, she passes most time regretfully going to parties, which she hates, but gives her some level of sociability. And at one of these parties, she is wined and dined, and then expected to pay for it, if you understand what I mean. And yes, while Esther always seemed disillusioned with the life that she was offered as a woman, she clearly cares for her studies and especially learning English/literature more than anything else, and shortly after this encounter happens, she is stripped of that ability, and it's implied it's at the hands of the man who assaulted her. Having everything she truly cares about taken away from her, this really marks the downward spiral of Esther, and while we follow her through a sort of malaise, which while she is quote-unquote seeking treatment for, eventually turns into repeated attempts to end her own life. Esther overdoses, and this takes us to the final act where Esther is institutionalized and recovering. It follows through friendships and observations made while she's there, eventually leading to Esther's semi-reluctant recovery. This last part is the main part that I want to talk about though. It ties back heavily to the title, The Bell Jar, which comes up multiple times in the book, and every time is used to describe this sort of cage/filter that serves to distort how we see the world and trap us inside. To quote the book, "How did I know that someday at college in Europe, somewhere, anywhere, the bell jar with its stifling distortions wouldn't descend again?" And from reading this, I've been obsessed with how good of an analogy it is for being in a bad place and the guilt/threat of it returning that even after recovering feels like it's still there looming. Depression is something that most people, including me, have dealt with, and if you have, then the previous quote about the bell jar's stifling distortions is something you probably understand. When you're in that headspace, everything you consume is filtered through a lens that sort of bends reality much in the same way that light reflects off a piece of glass. Our ideas of self inform our perceptions of things, which are essentially your reality, and vice versa, which is the basis of most philosophies. I kind of discussed this in a video that I did about cynicism on this channel, which I did later delete, but to summarize it, being cynical fucking sucks. Generally, being negative and critical of everything around you is a great way to struggle to keep relationships, have no positivity in your life. Those perceptions of the things that happen is what your reality is, and I think oftentimes this is forgotten, which I don't blame us for. I mean, you are the voice in your head, and 99% of the time we don't really go, what the fuck did I just say to myself? Some of us do, people who are very self-aware, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not one of them. Usually the worms in here are flying the ship. When you're under the distortions of the bell jar, it's hard to believe in anything, and most likely what you will believe in will just be a manifestation of your own biases. Depression works in a similar way, and that's the scourge of it, I would say. It's not only a numbness and an apathy, but the distorted way that you view and believe things that will slowly infect every area of your life. You will push people away, you'll let your self-worth die off, and ultimately probably believe no one cares about you, which is far from true. As you can see from the title of this video, which is The Looming Threat, one of the scariest parts of overcoming depression or moving past it is the sort of safety that's built around it. You can become attached to the safety of the numbness, because while those walls are up, you can entirely deflect everything coming at you. But once things get better, the looming threat kicks in. Personally, I find when things are good, I sort of look over my shoulder, sort of expecting a car crash to be right behind me. I'm so familiar with that state, and I'm waiting for it to come back. A part of me is yearning to go back to that place because I feel so safe in it. It's like an inner Stockholm syndrome almost. So while one half of me misses it, the other half of me, however, the side that actually enjoys life, the trans side, sorry, I had to sneak it in, lives in this sort of fear of that happening again, which the dread and guilt of, if left unchecked, can actually push you back into that space. I say this to mean it's important to be aware of how you attach your identity to things. It's a sort of twisted thing that we do as people. We naturally sort of attach pride to traumatic situations as a way to compensate with what's happened to us. But what I'm saying is I've learned that that tether can be insanely damaging, and releasing it is really hard, but it's key in moving forward. This clearly ties back a lot to how you think about yourself and confidence, which is something I'll get into another time, but the main point I want to make is, if when you are not in a depressive state, you are constantly worried about being back into it, then you're blocking yourself from enjoying the good times. And I think that is, or could be caused by an identity attached to these inherently traumatic states, which depression is. That attachment is a groove that can run very deep, and it's not easy to fix. I would be lying if I said that I had detached myself from this fear of the bell jar, because I haven't, and that's why I'm making this video. It's one thing to recognize something, and it's one thing to understand something, but actioning it is a completely different matter and requires a lot more continuous effort. This video has clearly been heavily related to depression, and I do want to make 2 more videos regarding this subject as a sort of depression trilogy. The trilogy, boys, we're cashing in fully on this one. It's going to be like John Wick. We might do 3, and then we've decided we need a 4th because those box office numbers are just too high, baby. But no, the next one we'll be talking about the guilt that you sort of feel in clarity after coming out of a sort of depressive phase. If you're a regular listener of this channel, you'll know that I do have these kinds of series going on currently at the minute. I have this one, I have the 3-episode series about being trans, I have the Essentials series coming up in February. So I'm going to be updating the playlist on this channel fairly frequently to make sure things are easier to track. If you've got this far, I do appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me. My name has been Penny. Pull over if you get tired, call me back, and